Good evening then everyone and welcome along to round 8 of the PSGL F3 PC Championship, and it is a rather solemn one this evening, as some of you may have seen from the news before. Quite a historical event has taken place just before we've gone live here this evening. We'd be remiss not to mention that event before we go into tonight's racing. For those of you who are unaware, it was announced about half an hour ago that Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II of England has passed away. So we just wanted to express our thoughts and say rest in peace to Her Royal Highness Queen of England. And just to pay our respects at the top of this broadcast ahead of tonight's race. So if you'd like to join us in a moment's silence ahead of tonight's race, that would be very much appreciated. And so, with that, thank you for joining us in that moment's silence. And now we must continue with tonight's broadcast. Of course, the championship is hotting up here in PCF3, and we are going to Brazil this evening for round 8. Joining me once again for tonight's broadcast is Ben Satsford. Ben, it's great to have you alongside me again tonight for the race in a championship that is getting towards its end and really starting to heat up now.
Yeah, it's an interesting circumstance. As I say, of course, we have say the news, and say again, we thank everyone for joining us in that moment of silence there. I say we hold the people of the UK in our hearts. I say I'm from the UK, and it's a little difficult, so it's processing it a little bit, but so we'll have that time, and of course we'll move forward as a country. But with that all being said, I do agree. I say that we do have a championship very much heating up. And we do have a lot to talk about.
We do indeed. Let's take a quick look at the standings ahead of... in fact, that's not the right standings. I don't have the correct standings currently on me for tonight's race, but I can assure you they are getting pretty close. If I look on the second screen now, on those, possibly get them in time for you. But then, while I'm just very quickly sorting this out, if you want to talk us through sort of where the standings are at this point in time, and we'll bring those up very, very shortly, as I say.
Okay, can do. So, in terms of key narratives right now, we have got a few fights up the top, up at the bottom of the field as well. So currently we have Drake Dempsey leading the championship, 61 points, 14 points clear of their next competitor in Daniel in the Williams. You have, following that, the two Alfa Romeos, very strong performance out there on the track over the course of the season, P3 and P4, so both with 40 and 38 points respectively. Zoltan Boda having a bit of a drop-off in terms of their performance in the latter rounds. Hopefully we can see them pack up, as we were seeing them up at the top of the fields. But beyond that, say, people to watch, say, Joseph Loke, say, doesn't always make the starts of the races, but when they do, on their day, they are an absolute force to be reckoned with. They have 2 out of 3 wins of the races they've been a part of. Looks like they will be joining us tonight. And, well, that's another one to watch, isn't it?
Yeah, as well as I said this last week, and I'll say it again, keep your eyes on Valentin Tijvaard in the Haas. He joined one race ahead of last week and had finished second in that one race. We then went to Imola last time out and he won the race there. He's definitely got pace in the Haas at the moment, so definitely keep your eyes peeled for another top-notch performance from the Haas driver this evening, trying to move up the championship. Of course, as I say, only taken part in 2 rounds so far, and is already up in P8 in the championship. So he is definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with. On to the track for tonight, however, and we are, as I said earlier on, going to Brazil, and I can hear the dinks in the background that we are loading into qualifying, so we'll take a look at the track very quickly. A very, very well-loved track in Formula 1, and also a track you can use as a marker, really, to see how long you've watched the sport for. Was it at the start of the calendar, or was it at the end of the calendar? And that is because, of course, most people, myself included, really, for the most part, you think, oh, Brazil, that's towards the end of the season. But beforehand, it was towards the beginning of the season. We've seen many titles wrapped up here, of course, when it was in place at the end of the season. Perhaps one of the most famous in the modern era of Formula 1, of course, was Lewis Hamilton in 2008. The very famous Martin Brundle exclamation of "Is that Glock?" on the final lap of a changeable conditions race around Interlagos. The Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache, 15 corners on the track tonight, and it's going to be a very, very exciting one. Now I can hear that we are now loaded into qualifying, so let's bring that up in game for you, and we can see who's going to be the first driver out there to take it onto the track this evening. As the timer begins to tick down, nobody coming straight out then, Ben. Nobody really wanting to be the first one out.
Yeah, looks like they're all biding their time as they seeing what lies ahead of them. Looks like we have Xander Van Dijken first to come out of the pits there from the McLaren suit. We've got a few drivers following behind. So we've got a Haas, we've got an AlphaTauri. Everyone is peeling out. Looks like they were quickly applying, say, what they had, applying setups and getting straight out on the field. I mean, we say they were waiting there and biding their time, but looks like we're immediately proven wrong on that one. But you're right, this is a track absolutely steeped in history, and you have to have your wits about you, especially on a track like this. You have a lot of complex turns, a lot of complex sections, and you've got to nail the lines.
Yeah, absolutely, especially through the mid-sector of the track that we can see Xander Van Dijken making their way through now. From what is a fairly easy-going track, I think it's safe to say the first sort of few corners and towards the end of the track as well, a lot more easygoing. It becomes very technical and very twisty on this infield section, going through once you really reach Ferradura all the way through until you've gone around Junção, which we see Xander Van Dijken doing now, and heading out onto this long left curve, which then becomes the start-finish straight. You've really got to be wary of where you're positioning the car and making sure you nail those lines to get the absolute most time out of it, as I'm sure we're about to see Xander Van Dijken do down through the center S's on the first lap, the back end getting away a little bit in the mid part of the corner. And as we round the apex of turn 3 onto the Retro Aposta towards the end of sector 1, we will get an idea. It was a 16.7 first sector for Xander Van Dijken. We'll see, I think he's actually backed out of that lap as well. That little wobble we saw through the first sector, obviously not happy with where the car is at this moment in time, and choosing to wait to go again. The next driver that was coming through on a hot lap was Valentin Tijvaart, the Haas driver, talking about at the top of the show, making his way through the infield section now. Hasn't backed out of a lap just yet, so we will now ride on board with him, heading through turn 10 and into turn 11. Mergulo towards the end of the second sector, 50.7 across the sector 2 split time. Round Junção we go, and into Subida dos Boxes and Arquibancadas onto the start finish straight. And I apologise immediately for all of the butchering of the names that is inevitably going to happen. And a 107.1, the first lap on the board for Valentin Tijvaart. The benchmark has been set.
Close words. A bit on the order. But there you saw it. Start figuring how tightly.
Apologies there, Ben. I think you're cutting out a little bit on my end. Not much is coming through sentence-wise, so hopefully we'll be able to get that sorted in a moment. But you can see Xander Van Dijken definitely did back off that lap with a 1:19.3, as we saw. Yannick Turkov also seemingly having backed off the first lap of the session, coming across the line with a 1:15. The rest of the field, though, all in the 1:07s, half a second separating pole position and P9 at the moment. Make that P10 now, so 10 cars within half a second of each other already as we saw in many of the other races so far this season. It's very, very tight on the grid. At the moment, Jan Halliday making their way around the final few corners now, though this isn't going to be a lap time on the board. It was an invalid lap and a backed out of lap at that 117 across the line. We're still, Zander van Dijken coming across the line to complete a actual representative lap time, and the closest so far, that time from Valentin Tijvaard, a 1:07.168. Hopefully, Ben, you're back with us now.
Here, we should be okay. Hopefully you can hear me a little bit better.
We can indeed.
Perfect. Apologies for that, but just trying to sort out audio crunch a little bit there. But yeah, there's a few validations, few people testing the limits. I think why we're seeing everyone getting out is because look at the skies above us. It's overcast. We don't know if it's going to rain. Drivers certainly don't want to make that gamble, so they want to get those soft runs and those quali runs as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about changeable conditions at the start of the show, and we could be heading for some changeable conditions pretty imminently, and also approaching pretty imminently is Jan Halliday to the start-finish line, a purple middle sector for the Aston Martin driver, so this could be a very quick time indeed as we head towards the line. What is it going to be? A 1:07.3, that's up to P7 then, the exact same time that Simon Lekomsky has pulled off, 1:07.326. Two drivers on the exact same lap time in P7 and P8 right now. That's how close this grid is. I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again through this season how close the grid is, but there's no better representation than that.
It's very much getting a lot closer now, and adjusting again a little bit there. Very close, coming together now. You can see the few drivers have yet to set laps. Say Milan Meyer, get owned, still here with us and still yet to place laps. Jarno Terpkov with a 1:15, you know they're going to be out improving that. And beyond that though, say like you said, half a second split between P1 and P12 now. It's going to be close.
Yeah, very, very close indeed. We're just taking a look at Getone's lap, which has just been invalidated. Unfortunately, another lap time going to arrive for Getone in the Alpine at the moment, but nevertheless, we'll complete the lap, I imagine, or at least most of the rest of it, to get a feel of the car around these last few corners. Valentin Tijvaard still out there at the moment with the fastest lap time of all. I believe Drake Dempsey is the first of the next round of lap times that we will be expecting in, just having started this lap, making their way onto the Retroposta right now. See 8th gear on the steering wheel and on the telemetry at the bottom of the screen as well. Into turn 4 with the Ferrari we go then, and Drake Dempsey will want a bit more of a solid performance to extend that championship lead as we've seen. Another good performance from the championship leader last time out. And we'll want to strengthen that with just 3 rounds to go in F3 season 31. Through the middle sector we go then. We'll keep our eyes on that time as you see the timing line coming up just as we make our way around Mergulo now. And what is this one going to be? It's not a purple sector. It is an improvement for Drake Dempsey though. A few thousandths up on the best time we've seen from them so far this session. Round the final corner we go then, and on to the start. In fact, no, not onto the start finish, straight into the pit lane comes Drake Dempsey, so not happy with the amount of improvement there. It was very, very marginal indeed, not even enough to move up to P2, even with how close there everyone is at the moment. Valentin Tijvaard doing exactly the same thing as well, I might add. He was just coming back in at the end of his next lap, so a couple of them getting sighters in, but not finding the improvements they were perhaps expecting on the second lap rounds. But somebody that is, Jake Finch in the Red Bull, 1:07.067. I was about to say, I wonder if track conditions are slightly changing with the clouds being over there, if the track is cooling and that may be affecting grip. But Jake Finch going out there and shutting me up before I've even started in the Red Bull and taking provisional pole.
It's a very strong performance there from that Red Bull, but everyone is just trying to get not only an improvement, but enough of an improvement to matter. May not have the resources they need to go for another push. And if you're talking about hundredths of a second, because Drake Dempsey knows they've got to make at least 40 milliseconds minimum in order to make that lap worth it. They were down 17 milliseconds by Sector 2, and I think at that point they just made that judgment call that, nope, I'm not going to make this. This doesn't feel like the one. Going to abandon, go into the pits, conserve my resources for the next run.
Yeah, and I imagine that's what we're about to see Zander van Dijken doing as well. Indeed we are. We caught up with Xander midway through that lap, and on that lap, Xander had a bit of a moment in the middle sector. The rear of that McLaren not looking very planted at all. It's the second time we've taken a look at a lap that Xander Van Dyken's been doing, and the second time the rear of the car has stepped out on him mid-corner. So not finding the improvements at the moment. Sitting P4 now with Jeffrey Ritchie having gone into P3 with a 107.152. And it's getting ever tighter at the top. That is 2/10 separating first to fifth at the moment. Like, it's a strong performance from Jake Finch, but everybody is really nipping at Jake's heels in this qualifying session. We've still got 8.5 minutes to go. You get quite a lot of time to try and find the time around Brazil. Being such a short lap means you can potentially get an extra run in through qualifying, which I'm sure a few of the drivers will be taking great advantage of this evening. Let's see if we've got anybody that's out there on the lap at the moment. No, Jan Halliday's just backed off. Daniel at the moment down in P12. That's not really where we'd expect to see the Williams driver either, making his way through the middle sector at the moment. 107.432 time on the board at the moment in the Williams, which is only 0.4 of a second behind Jake Finch, but that is the equivalent of 11 positions behind Jake Finch. But it is a purple middle sector, so this could be an improvement coming through then for Daniel as we round into Sector 3, heading towards the start-finish line, hugging that left-hand side as much as we can then, not diving into the pit lanes, keeping left to shorten the run to the line, and it is an improvement, a 107.150, 2 1,000ths faster. Jeffrey Ritchie to take P3 away from the Alfa Romeo driver then, and it's getting even tighter now with 2/10 from first all the way back to 6th position.
Everyone's just sort of bunching up. They're trying to extract the absolute maximum out of every inch of the track here. And I think that's what comes down to here at Brazil, is just, especially through the second sector, you've got to carry so much momentum and so much speed through that sector in order to make it work. That's really where you get a lot of your time. So you're swinging through the corners, you're setting yourself up for apexes, riding curbs in a lot of cases, and really, you just need to aim and nail those lines, because those lines are what make a lot of that time difference.
They absolutely are, and it is, momentum that's going to be the difference. Drake Dempsey's gone out there, speaking of making the difference, and very, very nearly got through to pole position. It just, 6,000ths of a second off the pole position time that Jake Finch had set, a 107.067 the pole time, 107.073 the time that Drake Dempsey set on that last outing. So everybody is nipping at the heels. Zoltan Boda going under the 107 ones as well, the 107.087, and it's 20,000ths of a second separating P1 and P3 right now, and Valentin Tijvaard is looking set to add his name to that list under the 107.1s. A purple middle sector. It looked very glued down in the middle, in the first sector as well, as the DRS opens on a Haas and we barrel towards the line. Xander Van Dyken takes pole with a 107.037. Valentin Tijvaard immediately steals it away from him with a 106.943. The first driver then under 107s. We've seen them getting closer and closer through the session. Valentin Tijvaard, the first one to break that milestone though.
I was literally about to ask you, do you think anyone is going to crack the 106 barrier? But looks like my questions have already been answered. Valentin Tijvaard putting in an absolute bullet of a lap there, really just making the most of it and getting, the fastest run on the track by a long margin. Looking at the rest of the field, how densely packed the rest of them are, for Tijvaard to go over, just under a 10th faster than the rest of the field, it's monumental.
It is, but don't blink too quickly, because Jeffrey Ritchie's out there on a lap as well in the Alfa Romeo, and he went purple in the first sector, so we could be looking at another driver getting closer and closer to that 106 milestone across the second sector line. What's it going to be? It's a 2,000th improvement, so it's losing a little bit of time, and losing a lot of time there coming through Jun Cao. The back end really, really not happy on the Alfa Romeo there. It was going to be an improvement. 2,000th would have been enough for a position on the 20,000ths, should I say? 2 100ths would have been a position on the grid. It's 2 1,000ths the gap to Daniel at the moment. So that is a costly mistake going through the final corner for Jeffrey Ritchie. The difference between 7th and 6th on the grid. Who's out there on a lap at the moment? Simon Lekomsky has just come back into the bits, as has Milan Meyer. So currently the answer to that question is no one. Just under 4 minutes to go in this qualifying session. Valentin Taivard then our current provisional pole sitter on that 106.9, as we're starting to see cars coming out now for the final runs of qualifying. Mert Comet, I hope I'm getting that right, in the Red Bull, is going to be the first to come out on these final runs in qualifying for round 8 then. Currently down in P12, 107.356. 4/10 off the pole sitter, 12 positions back. So what improvements are we going to see in the end of qualifying? The track is going to be at its best. Everybody will have gotten their eye in the best they can in this qualifying session. So now it's just going to come down to these final runs. And timing is really going to be everything. Coming out at the perfect moment to capitalise on the rubber down on the track. As Mert Comet then starting off this lap, staying as far right as possible. Going into the first corner to widen that line as best they can. Going down the centre S's to just carry as much of that momentum as you say. It's so important, even through the first sector. And then, of course, even more so through the mid-sector, which we're reaching now. It's a minor improvement. 0.032 up on the lap time going through the first sector, which is going to be pushing to rival Andrew Korapi's time if that stays the way it is towards the end of the lap. So we could see an improvement even with this minor time gains in starting position, but you need to hook this middle sector up first if you are Mert Comet. Behind the Red Bull looked like a bit of a slide there going into turn number 8, but kept it all together. But how much time did it cost? That's the answer. Nearly, well, over 0.6 of a second is how much that little slide cost. And that could be it for Mert Comet, unless they've managed to save the tyres. In fact, no, they're coming straight back in. They might be able to just about get out in time, but it's going to be very tight indeed.
It'll definitely be within, I think, about 10 seconds is my prediction. If they were about to get out now, get their set in and just go as fast as they can, they might be able to slip in that barrier and get set back out in time. But it's good to see some of our, say, regular performance at the top of the field back up there. So we got Zoltan Boda, who is back up in P5. So Jeffrey Ritchie also going for one. It's a shame they had that wiggle, a shame they had that slide, but they were on 2-lap old softs by that point, and you just saw their car snaking, oscillating. You lose control of that car, it's very difficult to get it back under the reins. But here we go, Yanni Turpkov now coming through. It's going to be an improvement. P11, 107.295. We've got everyone bar 3 drivers on track right now. Under the 107.3. Yes, it was just 4/10 separating P1 and P13. In fact, say P14, I'd say. And, of course, we have, say, Luka Mlenak, Jona Martins, and Joseph Luke not setting a time.
Yeah, and Jeffrey Ritchie has completed another run in this qualifying session and gets oh so tantalisingly close to breaking the 106 barrier. 107.014. It's good enough for P2 at the moment, but that could be displaced. Sander van Dijken is improving and making their way around the final corner now. Will this be an improvement for the McLaren driver? Across the line we go. It is, but not enough to improve in position. 107.030. That's the best we're going to see from Xander in this qualifying session. Jake Finch is currently out there on a lap as well, and it's very close on time for him as well through the first sector. He is almost equaling the initial lap time that was set in that Red Bull earlier on. 107.067. Just 6/1000ths ahead of Drake Dempsey, who is also out there on a lap at the moment, but a little bit further back on the track, so our eyes will stay glued for the moment to Jake Finch and to the timing screens to see if we see any improvements from anyone. Jake Finch, purple in the middle sector. The improvement on the lap time may not be enough to rival pole, but we could see if he's made some time in the final sector as well. This could be good enough for P3 on the grid as we head towards the line with Jake Finch. It is an improvement, but losing time, in fact, in the final sector. Drake Dempsey coming across the line. And that is good enough for an improvement. And 107.003, that's P2 for the championship leader. Not going to be good enough for pole position, unfortunately for him, by not a lot of time at all. And we were saying that gap back from Valentin Taivard to the rest behind was a little bit larger than we were maybe expecting, but that's because they hadn't done these final laps in qualifying, clearly, because now they have done. Those gaps are very, very small once again, and this will be your grid for this evening's Grand Prix. Then everybody has finished their laps, unless Modesto Mena is going any faster on this one. He is on one lap old tyres. No, he's coming into the pits. So that is your grid then. Valentin Tijvad starting up on pole with Drake Dempsey just tantalisingly close to breaking the 106 Barrett in P2. Jeffrey Ritchie also very, very close. 16 1,000ths ahead of Xander Van Dyken in P4. Jake Finch then another third of a tenth back in P5 as Zoltan Boda also under the 107s in P6. The top six all under 107.1, and of course pole position being under a 107 flat is absolutely incredibly impressive, and we're really in for a race if this grid is this close.
It's a testament to a lot of the pace of the drivers out here today in F3, and you know that's going to hurt for Drake Dempsey. Honestly, it's okay to miss a target like a 107, but to miss it by 3 milliseconds, you know that's going to sting. But regardless, the statement was made. They're up in P2 and in good standing with the rest of the field.
They absolutely are. Let's take a look at the rest of the field then. As we saw, we got as far as Zoltan Boda in P6. Modesto Mena and Daniel will line up behind him in P7 and P8, with Simon Lecomte, our teammates, lining up on row 5 of the grid. Ghetto did manage to get up to P11 towards the end of the session, lining up alongside Jan Haladej in 12th. Andrew Korapi, the American, in 13th, just ahead of Jane Turpkov in the second Aston Martin. Mert Comet in that Red Bull is just behind, and then we got the 3 drivers that didn't set their times in qualifying for one reason or another, rounding out the back end of the grid this evening. So get your predictions in chat. Who's going to win this one? Is Drake Dempsey going to take another win? Is Valentin Tijvad going to take another win? It would be a mighty impressive feat for Valentin Tijvad to take another podium in 3 races. Of course, 2 races started, 2 podiums, 1 win and 1 second position in Monza and Imola so far, and looking to continue that charge up the championship in the dying grasps of this season. Where can Valentin Tijvad finish? Can Drake Dempsey extend that championship lead as well? Time will tell as we wait for the drivers to load into the session. We'll be back with you in just a moment. Welcome back then, everyone. We are moments away from going live into this one then, as my green screen has really decided it did not like me in that intermission shot. So we'll go back to the in-game shot, and we are away, in fact. Jeez, they've gone away very quickly. Drake Dempsey leads away then, as the camera is not following the action for me for some reason. There we go, going down through the center as Drake Dempsey now leads off a brilliant start, going off ahead of Valentin Tijvad. Jeffrey Ritchie in P3 behind with Jake Finch. Zoltan Boda's making moves on Xander Van Dyken, who's going backwards, it looks like, at the start of this race. And Drake Dempsey then trying to extend this lead, but look at how close Valentin Tijvad is, looking to try and get back through. I do apologise about the lack of audio at the moment in the game. I will try and rectify that in a moment. We've got positions changing hands once again. Xander Van Dyken, Modesto Mena having a little battle of their own. We've got yellow flags in the background. Simon Lecomte has gone round. Korapi's making moves. Jonah Martins in the second. McLaren is also making moves with a battle with Milan Meyer right there. You can see side-by-side action all the way through the grid. There's an Alpine going into the back of. That was Jonah Martins. And we just about saw that then going down into Bico de Pato. Just a little tag on the back of Jonah Martins' car by, I believe that might have been, was it Joseph Loke? I can't quite tell at the moment. It may well have been Joseph Loke involved in that one as well, trying multiple cars going for a gap that really wasn't going to be big enough for that many cars to go through, and the unfortunate consequence was Jonah Martin span around. Simon Lecomte is coming into the pit lane at the end of lap 1 and picks up a penalty in the process, and it's been a very lively start as Xander Van Dyken now 3 wide down towards turn 4, taking 2 positions in the first corners this race. Back up to P4 now. Zoltan Boda's trying to take advantage as well as Jake Finch goes wide. And I need to take a breath because what a start of the race that was, and we almost missed it.
Yeah, it's a crazy start to the race. So we've got some great starts, some little big winners, some big losers. Looks like Simon Lekomsky had to go in for damage, it seems. So it may have been them who was implicated in that collision with Yona Martins there. So we got a big pile-up around the middle of the field. It's got drivers spinning left, right, and centre. We've got Koropi down, Yanni Turpkov down. Luke Malenak is, along with Milan Meyer, say, just escaping the chaos. But everyone is peeling through as after those mishaps on a track, they're just trying to keep it together. And everyone looks like it's absolute insanity out there on the field to get owned right now. Luka Malenak trading places, heading through to lap 2 and lap 3 here.
How many cars are we about to see dive into the pit lane as a result of that? We just got the end of it on the live broadcast. There's 1, 2, 3 cars into the pit lane in the end as Geoen picks up a penalty as well. Second this evening, and in fact retiring from the session after that one. I'm sure the stewards will be taking a closer look at that one after the race. Of course, all the drivers reporting their incidents to the PSGL stewards post-race with their footage of it, and penalties are applied at the end of that. At the moment, though, we've got more battles brewing on track. Joseph Loeb currently trying to defend from a charging Modesto Mena. This is something we've seen quite a lot in this season so far. Modesto Mena not with the best qualifying, charging through the field, especially. He does like the alternate strategy. Speaking of strategy, let's bring up the tyres that we can see on the cars at the moment as well. Jan Haladej taking an interesting approach compared to everybody else. It's pretty uniform up and down the grid with the exception of those that have made a pit stop so far. All on the hard tyres except for Jan Haladej. Keep your eyes on that Aston Martin coming through the field at the moment. You can see the gap ahead of Joseph Loeb. 2 seconds Jan Haladej has managed to pull at the moment. Right onto the back of the DRS train that goes as far forward as the lead of the race, which, as you can see, is starting to come under some pressure now from Valentin Tijvaart.
You're definitely going to have to be on the watch on them defending. And say, yeah, a lot of the drivers are on the hard tyres. It's a very uniform strategy. You want to get those earlier stints out, lock in those track positions, and wait for people to spread themselves out. Then you can eat yourself out a bit of a pit window and potentially look into things like overcuts or undercuts to lock in some strategy moves. But yeah, it is interesting that Jan Haladej on the mediums in a sea of hards. Simon Lekomsky on the soft, of course, taking the pit stop earlier, but has set a fastest lap for the time being. The question is that going to pay off for them? Because, of course, the soft tyres, very fast, very pacey, but they are 22 seconds behind the next driver in Yona Martins, and they are going to have to pit a lot earlier than some of these runners. That extra pit stop is going to absolutely cripple their race in the late game.
Yeah, and don't forget, they've got the penalty to go along with that later pit stop as well. 5 seconds from the dive into the pit lane we saw at the end of lap 1 for speeding in the pit lane, not quite getting on the limiter quick enough. And that could be even more costly for any fight they try and do. Of course, they may be able to make up time, though, on the softs to the hards. And we'll have to keep our eyes on what Simon Lekomsky can do as Valentin Tijvaart, once again, getting very close to the back of Drake Dempsey, but not making a move just yet, either by choice or not, remains to be seen. Now, though, we see with the DRS on the race leader, easing past the Ferrari down towards turn 4 and retaking the lead of a race that he started in the lead of. Of course, Drake Dempsey jumping the Haas on the start line. And it's taken this long for Valentin Tijvaart to get back in front. But of course, now we'll not have the DRS to assist. And you can see Drake Dempsey's got a lot of resources left, a little bit more ERS left in the tank. I feel like we talk about ERS quite a lot, but it's very, very important going forwards in the race to manage that ERS. So it's a very key talking point and something to keep a close eye upon as the laps unfold. We've got yellow flags in the background as that Luka Malenak's gone round. It is in Mercedes having a bit of a spin. That will drop them back into the grasps of Simon Lekomsky. So the first little battle that will be coming up for Lekomsky will probably be that Mercedes very, very shortly. Jan Haladej making moves down the start-finish straight, diving past Jake Finch with the help of the DRS. Those medium tyres are being put to good use right now, slowly making the way through this DRS train, and they need to play aggressive here because everybody else is going to have that compound advantage later on in the race.
Yeah, the compound advantage really is what's going to play into things here. So Jan Haladej making good time on the pace that they have as a result of those softer rubbers, but that is going to come back to bite them come the pit stop window. The question is, are they going to go medium to hard, try and match the stops? But doing so with traffic is going to be a little bit difficult, as it looks like we have, say, Luka Malenak really struggling with that Mercedes because they have now retired in the pit lane. Simon Lakomsky already coming in for a pit stop, going on to the hards, so they are going to be well behind the rest of the field. And I know it seems like clockwork. You mentioned that we talk about ERS a lot, but it goes to show how evenly matched these two are. So on track, Drake Dempsey, Valentin Tyvard are just so close to each other. They are within hair's breadth of each other in a lot of places. When they race together, it's a sight to behold. So it does come down to those longer game strategy moves, like the ERS, like strategically staying behind for DRS zones. It's a lot of mind games, and these drivers play it to absolute perfection.
They absolutely do. It's. I'd say it's like 4D chess, but it's another dimension of chess altogether. With the amount of things that you've got to consider driving one of these cars at the pace these guys do, keeping your eye on how much tyre wear you're using, how much fuel you've got left in the car, how much ERS. It boggles my mind trying to think of that much.
Yeah, it is like an old adage that some might say. You may be playing chess while they're playing checkers. It's the inverse here. Say these guys are thinking about so much more than we can ever comprehend, and doing it in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it comes to the real-time element, really does play out especially well for things like strategy calls. What lap to come into the pits on, of course. So many people have been playing F1 Manager over the last couple of weeks, and myself included in that. And one of my favourite things in that is the fact that you can pause the race to decide, hang on, there's a safety car. Should I pitch? Why not? You don't get that luxury when you're driving one of these things. You've got to think on the fly, as we saw George Russell do in the real world Formula One last time out as well. Making that strategy call on the fly in the heat of the moment that pays off and gets a podium for him. The same thing could be said for if we get a late race safety car coming through here in PSGL F3 as well. Those strategy calls could be absolutely key depending on how well you adapt to them.
Yeah, you have to adapt. You have to be ready. And it is a lot of case, like you said, with George Russell, that sometimes the person who understands the situation most is the driver in the seat. Race engineers have a lot more information at their disposal, but sometimes it comes down to the driver. So they know exactly what, say, their car is doing. They know exactly when the tires are going off, when to make that judgment call. And that's one they make for themselves. You'll hear it all the time in Formula One is that you'll have a pit window rather than a set lap because that's for the drivers to make that judgment of, okay, my tyres are giving up at this point, I need to come in. And depending on how they manage them, they can feel that. And that's their choice to make.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have all the data in the world, but the only person that knows how the car is feeling at any particular time is the person driving the thing. So, yeah, for even... We talk about these engineers, and of course some of these drivers will have their engineers with them as well, with a similar array of data as I imagine you've got at the moment, but on one of your screens there, Ben, as we do see Valentin Tyvard looking like he was trying to break the tub a little bit there on Drake Dempsey, just pulling across to the inside. Perhaps he was expecting Drake to be making a move on this lap and covering off the inside, but it didn't look like Drake was really trying to take that bait at the moment. Happy to run around behind and hold on to his battery for the time being, battery which he still has plenty available of, but as does Valentin Tyvard. That's how evenly matched. We've talked about these battles before where you've got two cars running around in similar places on the track and the guy behind saving his ERS, and then you look at the guy in front and he's got like no ERS left because he's trying to run away and he can't. Not the case this evening. Valentin Tyvard is currently running out in front of this race with a nearly full battery, and Drake Dempsey is right behind him with a nearly full battery. This is a fight that we're going to be seeing all the way through this race. If we take a look at Jeffrey Rich as well, pretty similar case there for the Alfa Romeo. Battery life is looking very healthy indeed. Xander Van Dyken, a little bit less left on the ERS than he perhaps would like, but those top three are all very, very evenly matched at the moment.
They are definitely fighting, say, tooth and nail right now. So they've got a bit of a move down the back of the field to say Jake Finch is going to throw a little bit of a dummy down the inside of Jan Halliday. I think we might start to see at some point soon that tyre transition window start to come into play. I'd say we're not going to be there for a little bit yet, but that being said, it's certainly going to be a worry on Jan Halliday's mind. And Jake Finch is going to capitalise on that 100%. They are lying in wait, waiting for that prime opportunity to do so. But as we're saying, with the top of the field, they also evenly matched. They're managing their resources. Tyvard, in fact, is probably in a stronger position at this point in time than Drake Dempsey. And I'll tell you why. It's because they control the pace of the race. This is a track that thrives on momentum and good lines and almost being a little bit single file in some places. So for Tyvod to be in that position, to control the pace of the race, to have those optimal lines where drivers behind you, especially around Sector 2, have to deal with a little bit of dirty air, and we saw with Drake Dempsey trying to break the toe, that they have to compensate, they have to compromise their line compared to a lot of the other drivers on the field who have a bit more clean air. And that's exactly what Tyvod's case is. So they've got perfect match in terms of resources. What it's really going to come down to is if anyone makes any blunders, and of course the crucial, how quickly is the pit stop?
Yeah, absolutely. And trying to get a mistake-free pit stop and the timing of that pit stop as well, of course. We'll see as the race unfolds whether the undercut or the overcut is going to be the preferred choice for the drivers around here. As it's quite a lengthy pit lane. What I can remember, it's not as large a time loss as it would look, but of course, as you can see from the track map down there, on the bottom right corner, that little white squiggle on the inside of the left-hand side, that is the pit lane. You go in, coming just out of here, going around turn 15. You don't come out the pit lane until you've made your way around to turn 3. Of course, some of that will be on the pit limiter, some of that won't, but how much time are they going to lose in those pit lane, in the pit lane?
Saying that, sorry to cut you off, mate, but we're about to see a massive battle down the back of the field. Daniel going down around the outside of Milan Maya. Isn't going to get the move done. They're going to bump tyres. They're going to come through into the second DRS zone here. Daniel's going to go for another one in that Williams. They have the speed advantage, so you can see Milan Maya going very narrow. Can't quite do it. Daniel's going to poke his nose in, but again, can't make it do his contact. A bit of a slide from Milan Maya. He's going to hold the inside, heading into Sector 2. These two are going to be holding neck and neck. Milan Maya is going to lock in that Sector 2, though, and that is certainly a battle that we're going to have to watch with very close eyes.
We absolutely are. That's it's getting a bit intense towards the back end, trying to fight towards those points playing positions then. Towards the back end of the top 10, and Daniel looking a little bit more comfortable in that Williams at the moment than Milan Maya is in the AlphaTauri. That's looking fairly certain there. Of course, Milan Maya just outside of DRS range of Mert Comet at the moment, so that could play into Daniel's advantage as well as we head on to the start-finish straight once more. Half a second back this time when the DRS opens. That half a second will be gone in a flash. As you can see, the closing speed, DRS to no DRS. Don't think he'll be close enough into the center S's, but he's definitely drawn closer now and just needs to follow that AlphaTauri down the hill and on to the Retro Imposter, and there we may see another attempted move into turn 4. It looked maybe a little bit last minute last time, trying to poke that wheel in and just banging wheels. This time, not taking so much of a risk, still following Milan Maya for the time being, but yeah, that's a position change I'm expecting to happen fairly soon.
It's going to happen fairly soon for sure. So you've got Milan Maya, 5% ERS right now on the ropes. You can see them trying to recharge at every occasion, trying to curtail Daniel's pace humming through Sector 2. Their one real chance where they can recoup a bit of resources. Daniel, unfortunately, didn't get the move done heading into lap 13. They had a lot of slip coming out of Sector 3, pushing it a bit too hard. But so is Milan Maya, sliding out a little bit, coming through into the final sector here, say into the final corners, washing quite wide. I do wonder how their grip levels are doing and maybe if they sustained any damage at some point during the race. But here we go. Say Daniel, 3/10 out, is about to have the ERS, got a really good run through the final corners. The flaps open. He's round the outside. Is he going to hold it? He's got around Milan Maya heading into lap 14, and that is going to be a move locked in, at least for now. The question is, though, have they got that same amount of resource to cover off the AlphaTauri through the second DRS? They've got about half a second, and it looks like it just might be enough. Yes, it is. Daniel, up into P11.
Yeah, but now he's got the pressure. He needs to try and close that gap to Mert Comet in front because, of course, he's 1.2 seconds down at the moment, meaning he doesn't have the DRS advantage. And, of course, this will work quite nicely for Milan Maya going forward in the race as well, because now Daniel can just drag him along back onto that little pack, and they can resume where they were almost a couple of laps ago. So, while the position's lost for now for Milan Maya, it's not completely over. Being drawn back into this pack, there are still points on the table for both Daniel and for Milan Maya. They just need to swoop in and take them. You can see that gap that Daniel's managed to close. I'm not sure he's got DRS on this lap. He might just be close enough, just have been close enough across the line. We'll see if the flap opens No, it won't. So just outside of that window this time. Milan Mayer's not close enough to make a move, but will be using that DRS to stay in touch for the time being. And I believe it will probably be this lap. I can expect Daniel to be closing back of that pack and joining them.
They did very well to close up a little bit of time there. So despite burning a lot of resource for that overtake on Milan Mayer, so down 16% right now. Milan Mayer, by comparison, is below 10% for pretty much the majority. They're running as lean as they can to try and keep within range of that DRS. They're running practically on fumes from a battery perspective, and they just need to recoup what they can. They're falling behind. Daniel seems to have the lock on pace now. They have that clean air. They're teetering on that second gap, though, and that's why we didn't see that DRS. It's just they were teetering, and looks like they were on the wrong side of the line when that detection point came up. But Jan Halliday is another one that we need to focus on, because we're going to be coming up to that window before we know it. Say those mediums, we're seeing some of the pacing are going to start to drop off pretty soon. You can see they're almost a second off their peak. And that's one thing you've got to be careful of.
Zoltan Boda diving up the inside, just ahead of Jan Halliday, diving up the inside of Xander van Dijken into the center S's there with the help of the DRS. Taking P4 where we get yellow flags in the background, as I think Jonah Martins has had a spin coming on to the start-finish straight, just on the exit of Jones Howe. But for now, Zoltan Boda now holding P4, and we were hoping for a performance from Zoltan Boda that would more mimic what we've come to expect of the Alfa Romeo driver throughout the season, and so far so good. P4 at the moment for the number 53, ahead of Xander van Dijken, trying to stay in touch with those lead three who are still looking pretty evenly matched on their resources at the moment. Valentin Tijvaard still leading as we head around towards the end of lap 16. I imagine we might start seeing some pit stops coming in sooner rather than later. It really is a question of how long can those mediums go in this race. They came in a little bit earlier than we were expecting last time out, so it would not surprise me to see them coming in a little bit earlier than expected in this race too. Shona Martins, in fact, DNFs from the race, retiring.
Is that them coming out of the pit lane, though? Is that right in the path of the track? And as you can
oh
see,
no, he's crashed at turn one.
You say right in the path of the race. So I thought this was coming out of the pit lane.
That's a safety car.
But
safety car coming out.
Safety car.
Yeah, so I was saying we might be expecting some pit stops soon. I can imagine we'll be seeing quite a lot of them very, very shortly. As the lead group now come around into the middle sector, you can see the little yellow dot coming towards the end of Sector 1 on the minimap. That is the safety car, assuming its position from there. I'm not quite sure what happened to Jonah Martins then. I thought, as you say, that he'd come into the pits on this lap. In fact, he did come into the pits on this lap. So how come his car has wound up in the mid... It must have been the mother of all crashes for the McLaren to wind up where it did. But regardless, it wound up there and has caused this mid-race safety car, lap 17 of 36. I imagine we are about to see a whole lot of pit lane action at Interlagos, as I'd be very, very surprised to see anybody on the hard tyres at the very least, and definitely surprised to see Jan Halliday not coming into the pits. Let's count them in then to make our way around the corner. In comes Valentin Tijvaard, Drake Dempsey, Jeffrey Ritchie, Zoltan Boda, Xander van Dijken, Jan Halliday, Jake Finch, all in. Joseph Loke, Modesto Mena, Mert Comet, Daniel,
it's the whole grid.
The whole grid. Coming
grid
into the pits at the end of lap 17 then. And yeah, is anybody going to get any positions? Of course, we're going to have some double stacking going on from some of the teams coming through here as well. Valentin Tijvaard retains the lead. Xander van Dijken's P4. Zoltan Boda has lost positions, has been held up horrifically in that pit stop, drops down to P8. Of course, he would have pitted behind Jeffrey Ritchie, who was in P3, and that's lost him a bunch of time. Same goes for... In fact, no, I don't think that goes for anywhere else. I think just about large enough gaps further back on the grid, but big winners there. Jan Halliday just needs to try and get those hards up to temperature now. Jake Finch retaining where he was. Joseph Loke gained a position, of course, Zoltan Boda as well, dropping back. The big loser in that pit stop, really, through no fault of his own. But Valentin Tijvaard does retain the lead then. Some of the strategy questions have been taken away from us, thanks to this safety car caused by some kind of wreck from Jonah Martins. We're not quite sure what. But the car was. I think people are saying the AI came out of the pits and crashed, which is rather unfortunate if that is the case.
Yeah, by looking at the position of the car on the track, it was dead center. So I believe there is truth to that. So what happens, say, by the looks of things, is the AI crashed, knocked out their complete front end, and then, of course, because they were in that pit lane zone, respawned them dead center in the track, triggering the safety car. So that is a bit of a breakdown of what I believe happened. Of course, we unfortunately didn't see it. They were right down the other end. We didn't fully catch it. But yeah, this safety car proving to be a big equalizer. Say Tyvard retaining position with a stellar pit stop, and Drake Dempsey doing the same. But yeah, say the Alfa Romeos, I was about to praise them for being so high up for the both of them, and of course getting some very good points in the Constructors' Championship. But this safety car has really thrown a spanner in that. So Zoltan Boda still up in P8, so it's not like all is lost. But in the same breath, it's certainly far from an ideal situation.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Now, we know from the earlier phase of this race, at least, Zoltan Boda has the pace to be keeping it up there with the top four. So, possibly some moves going to be coming through. We'll be wanting to gain those positions back. But it is, as we say, one of the unfortunate consequences of the timing of that safety car being sort of what we would have expected to be smack bang in the middle of the pit window for the entire field. And running so close to your teammate in that kind of a situation really is only going to lead to one outcome. And that outcome is a heck of a lot of time in the pit lane.
Well, there's always going to be winners and losers, isn't there? There's no such thing as a perfect safety car for everyone. Like we saw a big winner, Jan Haladej, say coming up to the end of the life on those mediums and immediately being able to capitalize on that. What has happened to Modesto Mena, however, looks like they've had a bit of an issue. So as you see a few position changes behind the safety car, not typically what you're meant to see. But yeah, you have big winners like Jan Haladej. It's a perfect timing to come in for the hard tires to swap their strategy, and say safety car perfectly complementing that. And then you have people like Zoltan Boda having to double stack right behind their teammate. Big loss for them, but they've still got one of their teammates in P3, Jeffrey Ritchie, and you know they're going to be holding that pressure as Tyvard currently has control of the pace. Safety car is coming in now, getting the heat into those mediums before we set off.
Yeah, and when Willie pulls the trigger, leading them round, he's going to know that the toe is going to be strong going down towards the centre S. He's going to leave it as late as possible. Now, has he gone? Yeah, it looks like he has. And he has just about managed to get the jump. But Jan Haladej on that restart was looking especially racy, taking a look at Sander Van Dyken and Jeffrey Ritchie. In fact, they're side by side with Sander Van Dyken. You can see there's the McLaren popping into view from the left-hand side. It's too wide all the way down the field as we go. There's a spinner in the background as well as Mert Comet, I believe, has gone round at... Yeah, Jake Finch is still there. It's 4 or 5 wide almost, going down towards turn 4. More contact. It looked like who's gone wide? 3 cars going wide through there. Jake Finch holds position for the time being. Daniel and
Yone Turkov as well round at the back of the field. So it's all kicking off in this mid pack here. So they've got Simon Lakomsky and Daniel facing off. So Lakomsky goes wide. Daniel's holding the inside. 3 wide with Zoltan Boda. Simon's going to hold that inside line, though. Going to try and lock that position in before more chaos. But Zoltan Boda's going to come at the inside. Going to bang tyres. 3 wide, coming through the second into the third sector. Jan Haladej dropping down to P10. Not an ideal situation for them by any stretch. But into that, if you go, that's a spin. That's contact with Milan Mayer. That's going to be damage.
Yeah, more heartbreak for Jan Haladej. Damage and down to P13 as Valentin Tyvard sets the fastest lap of the race. And I feel like one person we've not really spoken about, not mainly because we've not really had a chance to, but I think the biggest winner of that safety car is Simon Lakomsky. We saw earlier on, dropped way down towards the back of the grid, took a penalty earlier at the end of lap 1, coming into the pit lane a little bit too quickly, made 2 pit stops before the field had even thought about making 1. And thanks to that safety car and being able to dive in and pick up the tyres to match everybody else, is now up into P8.
I think it was a good reality check for them. Of course, they had that penalty, served it, and I think they just, from that point, kept their nose clean. They stayed out a lot of the trouble, and they've completely flipped the script on us, going from the bottom to one of the top spots on the grid. Modesto Mena now going into the pits. Mert Comet and Andrew Korapi trading places in quite a breeze for Mert Comet, it looks like. So they got already almost a second on the Haas driver. But yeah, big winners out of that. Jake Finch as well, managing to slip in, almost get the move as well on Zander Van Dyken on the restart. Didn't quite lock it in, however, but still in a very good spot.
Yeah, the reason why that position was so easy to take, as you can see from him now diving into the pits, Andrew Korapi are feeling like we're about to see retire. There it is. He picked up some damage, I believe, in the little tussle with Yannick Turpkov earlier on. Was missing an end plate, which is why we saw Merkoma able to just breeze by going through the middle sector. As Valentin Taivard still leading for the time being, dragging Drake Dempsey along with him. It's starting to separate a little bit. These top three have pulled away, and Jeffrey Ritchie's having to burn. In fact, the whole front of them are having to burn a lot to try and pull away Sander Van Dyken at the moment, which they are successfully doing. None of them with really much battery left to go. As Simon Lekomsky, I feel like we might have cursed him. We were praising him for managing to keep it clean and coming back through, and in fact has picked up another time penalty. For this time for track extensions. We've got very close, two cars very close, a little bit
It's gonna
further
be Finch
back.
and Loke.
It's Finch and Joseph Loke indeed. And I'm speaking of Finch, I'm seeing reports in the chat that Jake Finch might have some damage from contact with Sander Van Dyken on the restart. There's nothing visible on the car, but of course there is more elements on the car that can be damaged than just the front wing. This time around, he can damage the floor, the side pods. So if he's got something, and it definitely looks like he might do, because Joseph Loke did make that look quite easy, and now Daniel gaining on the Red Bull as well. There could well be some damage on that car, which is hindering Jake Finch's charge at the moment, and it's giving Xander a nice bit of breathing room in the McLaren as well for the time being.
It's certainly looking like they have got a fair bit of understeer compared to the driver ahead, which may indicate that there's some damage. Nothing's coming up in the commentary box from the stats that I have, but just judging by pace alone, given that they're already in the crosshairs from Daniel, just 2 tenths behind, close that gap near immediately, it does look like they've picked up some damage that we may not have detected on our end, but the race engineers may be aware of. You know they're going to be panicking a little bit in the pit wall with the strategy and trying to figure out their next moves. But right now, as it stands, they're a sitting duck from Daniel. So P7 is going to be making that charge up. Doesn't quite got the run, but has the DRS. So does Finch. Is going to keep that gap at least for now. So just being enough behind Loke to keep the DRS for themselves. But by no means are they out of the woods yet. These teammates can both work together as well. Potentially put a little bit of defensive pressure on Finch, to say Loke can, in order to hold them up for their teammate to pass by. That could be essential constructors points.
It absolutely could. I'm just going to apologise right now for the slightly jittery audio on the stream, folks. I don't think there's much I can do about that for the time being, but the action's still coming to us, albeit in a slightly jittery fashion on the audio front of things. But for the time being, what's happened out front? Nothing. Gap is just showing as being slightly off on my screen for some reason. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the timing tower right there, but I can assure you the gap back from Valentin Taivard to Drake Dempsey is not 3.1 seconds. In fact, it's considerably less than that, as you can see on screen right now. Drake Dempsey and Jeffrey Ritchie right on the back of our race leader as we go on to lap 25. And there we go, the gap's updating now. 0.2 of a second, quite a bit less than 3.1 seconds. As we start lap 25. But look at the gap they've pulled to Xander Van Dyken at the moment. And Xander chilling in a bit of free air at the moment. He's got 2.7 seconds. But Joseph Loke, he's coming for him at the moment. And bringing Jake Finch and Daniel with him as well. So this could be a battle that unfolds as we get towards the end of this race for Xander Van Dyken. For now, he's not got much resources left. Whereas Joseph Loke has a little bit more left in the tank at the moment, heading round into the middle sector, so that could be telling when this battle finally does unfold. Jake Finch still coming under a lot of pressure as well, just behind Joseph Loke from the other Alpine car. From the Williams, sorry. Every car being blue is mighty tricky sometimes. Daniel in the Williams applying the pressure still, but not managing to get past the Red Bull with some suspected damage to it. In P6 at the moment, maybe biding his time, maybe not quite able to match the pace at the moment. Time will tell as the race unfolds, and Drake Dempsey is getting very close once again to Valentin Taivard.
It is just a case of biding their time, really. Say Even keel on terms of resources. Drake Dempsey, in fact, having slightly more, using that DRS again as a bit of a recharge tool where they can. Just keeping that proximity in a tried and tested strategy for them. But to say, Xander Van Dyken right now, their strategy, my recommendation, is that they are fast, but they're not 3 seconds on 11% battery fast. So their point of view, they should be focusing on, say, regaining a bit of resources, getting a bit of ground back. They have Loke on their tail. Just keep them out of DRS range. It's just over a second, but fluttering on that line. They just need to keep them at bay to put themselves out of harm's way and try to recharge those resources. They want to go for a defensive fourth rather than risk it too much at this stage.
Yeah, but given the pace of Joseph Loke, I'm not sure how long that Xander Van Dyken's going to be able to stave off the attack that is imminently approaching. As was Joseph Loke under the 1 second window across the DRS detection line? No, but definitely is now, getting very close to the back of the McLaren, heading into the first few corners. And I imagine he might have DRS at the end of this lap, so that is going to be something that will be playing on Xander Van Dyken's mind right now. Has he burned too many resources trying to catch up to these three out front? And is it going to cost him P4 or maybe even P5 later on? We've still got 9 laps of this race to go, of course. So that's a lot of time for positions to change hands. Now, I imagine we'll be seeing positions starting to change hands a little bit more towards the front of the field as those laps count down. Valentin Tijvaart's been leading for a very long time, but as you can see, all of them in that sort of lead battle are very similar in terms of resources available right now, and Valentin Tijvaart at the disadvantage of not currently having the DRS. So if an attack were to come, if the battery button were to get pressed by Drake Dempsey along with the DRS, there's not really a whole lot for that particular lap that Valentin Tijvaart would be able to do about it.
Yeah, there's very little they can do, and I think it is just Drake Dempsey just playing his cards, setting up his hand ready for a final flush in the closing laps. But a lot of them are, say, pushing as much as they can. Say, got Jake Finch and Daniel, say, fighting between each other right now for P6. Fends off an attack from that Williams, just about. So I think it had it on the inside, it looks like, but managing to keep them at bay. But yeah, just focusing back in on Xander Van Dyken, put yourself in their position. What can you realistically do? You either burn resources trying to get to the front, or you burn resources in a defensive manner from Joseph Loke. So no matter how you slice it, you can use sections like Sector 2, where it is very single file, to recoup some of those losses. But you ultimately have to be burning in order to stay where you are. So no matter what you do, you are, unless you play your cards very carefully, as good as a sitting duck.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I wouldn't want to speculate on maybe what he could have done, because to be honest, they know a lot better than I do driving these things, and I talk fast, I don't drive fast. But maybe if it were me, as we've got to move, we'll come back to that in a moment. Daniel making his way past Jake Finch now with the help of the DRS, going down towards turn 1. Did finally manage to get that move done, and now we'll see Zoltan Boda closing in towards the back of the Red Bull. But is Jake Finch going to be able to come back at Daniel down towards turn 4? I think the answer is a firm no, and we'll settle in to P7 for the time being. But coming back to Xander Van Dyken then, in this unfolding battle, maybe, I mean, hindsight is 20/20, right? So maybe he could have realised that perhaps his pace wasn't on there with the leaders and backed off to try and generate resources, anticipating the fight coming from Joseph Loke. But then you're sacrificing your potential podium for that one, as unlikely as it may or may not be pace-wise. Anything could happen in these races. It's a very tough call to make, and as I say, hindsight is 20/20 in this situation, but it has now left Xander Van Dyken with a very nearly empty battery and a very quick Alpine gaining on him from behind.
Yeah, they are very much closing in at this point, but to say the resource game is another one that comes into play big time. So Jake Finch on 10%. With Daniel, they've got that move done because they were over half battery by that point. So they did just see the strategy that I think Drake Dempsey is trying to pull on Valentin Tijvaart, which is saving those resources and then going for a last minute charge where The other driver is very much a sitting duck. They burned what they have, and the best they could do is position their car in such a way that they keep them at bay. But to say, looking at the front of the field, everyone's pretty closely bunched up. And again, we fall back to the idea that these top three, these podium drivers, have really broken away. So Sander Van Dyken, 2.5 seconds out, not having that DRS on tap. Half a second behind is Joseph Loke, however. They are starting to get a little bit into that danger zone. He's only got 20% battery. Loke's got 46. You know he's going to be worried about that.
Absolutely, and at this stage of the race, this will be where Loke will want to make the move. He won't be hanging around to save resources or to manage the CRS. If he thinks he's got a shot at the podium, he's going to make this move, and he's going to make it very, very soon. Look how close going down into the Senna S as the back of that McLaren is to the Alpine this time. As we head down the hill towards turn 3 and around the Curve del Sol, onto the Retta Aposta once more we go. Is the DRS going to be enough? Not a lot of battery being used, so maybe not doing a move this time around. Maybe evaluating and thinking that this may be the best finishing position with the 3-second gap ahead that they can achieve at the moment, as Jake Finch has, unfortunately for him, had a bit of an issue further to what we were already seeing issue-wise, and has dropped a few positions from a disconnection from the game, unfortunately, this time, and that may well drop him out of the points if he can't get back in time. But for now, we do have Joseph Loke gaining on Sander Van Dyken and Valentin Tijvard still leading this trio around. This is more than likely going to be the 3 podium drivers this evening. The question will be, in what order? It's been Valentin Tijvard for the entire race, leading in one way round or the other. Valentin Tijvard, of course, starting on pole position. But Drake Dempsey just getting the better start and managing to take the lead on the first lap of the race. But Jeffrey Ritchie's been there the whole time, just watching, just waiting, just biding his time. And we could still yet see a charge from the Alfa Romeo driver towards the end of the race. So don't rule that out yet either. 4 laps to go of the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache, as Jake Finch AI has made a interesting tactical go onto soft tyres. So if Jake does manage to reconnect to the lobby, we may well see some fastest laps from the Red Bull, if not any points to that unfortunate disconnection.
It's a nasty shock to them, though, because you know that they're going to be frustrated. It's outside of their control. It runs completely counter to their strategy and what they had in mind. Although, speaking of strategy, I cannot help but be confused by Modesto Mena right now. They are on 28 lap-old hards, and they are dropping seconds per lap. Why did they not pit earlier?
Yeah, a pit stop under the safety car might have been the right call for Modesto Mena. I was saying earlier on, a fan of the alternate strategy. Perhaps not quite this alternate, though, next time, Modesto.
There we go, the move has been done. Joseph Loke has got past Sander Van Dyken. Is Van Dyken going to get a counter-attack? They have 25% battery. They have DRS. It's going to be 3/10. It's not going to be enough, though. They're going to be stuck behind that Alpine in P4, and right now they have a slight resource disadvantage, so will we see them charge back up with the 2 DRS zones, or are they going to focus on that resource?
Yeah, and importantly, how much pace does Joseph Loke have now? Can he break into that gap? You can see the gap has come down a little bit on this lap, actually, from 2.9 to 2.6 seconds, so Joseph Loke's closing in. I don't think there's enough time left in the race, unfortunately, for him to get onto that lead 3, but I'd be more than happy for him to prove me wrong. As I was saying, those 3 are likely to be the podium, but Joseph Loke could well be the spanner in the works of that one. 2.4, and look, he's already broken DRS to Sander Van Dyken. The pace in that Alpine, he's been unleashed right now. 2.5 seconds, the gap, of course, going down the main straight. As Daniel gets past Sander Van Dyken as well, it's slowly coming undone. Sander Van Dyken in the final stages of this race. DRS lets the Williams by easily, and Zander's resource deficit that he's been suffering with earlier on really coming back to bite him in the closing stages. No battery in the tank, the DRS wide open on the cars behind, and it's easy pickings.
Yeah, it is, to say, Sander Van Dyken's case, coming undone. As you say, they're less than 10% battery. They are as good as a sitting duck, and with the 2 DRS zones as well to essentially confirm the move, they really had nothing that they could viably do. all the drivers around them had much more resource at their disposal. And just like that, Zan van Dijken starting to fall away. I don't think they need to worry about Zoltan Boda, 2.4 seconds behind. Modesto Maynard finally coming into the pits after 29 laps. It was a good run, but I don't recommend going on any form of tyres for that long. But it looks like Jane Turpkov, what's happened to them? They're off track.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's gone on with Jane Turpkov there, because that's... For the game to give them a penalty for corner cutting and then the crash to happen is very, very interesting indeed. And they've wound up just on the inside of the infield. That's around, I believe they have come a cropper through there. Yes, it is Pinarino by my little track map, which is upside down compared to the one in the game, which means it takes me a while to figure things out. But if it weren't so late in the race, I think that would have caused a safety car, actually. But given we are on the penultimate lap, no safety car, but given we're on the penultimate lap, this is the time for Drake Dempsey to start making moves towards that P1. And making moves he is. He's already shown intent on this lap by pulling alongside Valentin Tayvard in the mid-sector of the lap. And as we round the final few corners now, it is action time as we get ready to start the final lap of this race, the final lap of round 8 of PSGL. These three have been running 1, 2 and 3 for the longest period in this race. And as we approach the final lap, who is going to come across the finish line in P1? Drake Dempsey is on the hunt. You can see him burning that battery to try and get in front. Valentin Tayvard with a lot less than he perhaps would have wanted. Drake Dempsey is in the prime position now, burning more battery through T3 with the DRS available to him. Down towards turn 4 we go. Which way is he going to go? Diving to the inside of Valentin Tayvard. Can he keep it on the road? He's gone, and it's a switch back for Valentin Tayvard. They're still side by side as we head up towards turn 5. Inside line for Drake Dempsey though. Can he hold on to it for now? He's just about squeezing Valentin Tayvard out. But look at this. I was saying keep your eye on Jeffrey Ritchie now. Looking to the opportunistic move to try and take back past Valentin Tayvard and jump that extra position. Tayvard just about holding on to that one. But Drake Dempsey still in the lead for the moment as we head through the middle sector of the lap. Drake Dempsey holding the lead. Valentin Tayvard now in P2. In fact, he's gone round. Valentin Tayvard goes around. And was there contact with Jeffrey Ritchie, or has he just about held on? Tayvard, who's led this race for so long, drops it in the middle sector on the final lap, and around he went, and he's not going to finish on the podium. Daniel will take that honour, but Drake Dempsey wins from Jeffrey Ritchie, and across the line does come Daniel, ahead of Joseph Loke and Xander van Dijk, and Valentin Tayvard having to settle for P6. Got a little bit too hot on the power coming out of Magulo on the final lap. Drops the rear end, and for the first race this season, Valentin Tayvard not finishing on the podium for what would have been a surefire win almost.
And what a finish that was, but I don't think that win was a surefire, as you say, because we just saw a strategy executed to perfection. Throughout that entire race, Drake Dempsey was lining up their cards, counting the deck, setting up everything in motion, and that final lap is where it all came into play. They had 30% extra battery compared to Tayvard, and they had that battery. You saw that move coming out the second DRS zone. They were side by side. Drake Dempsey had that extra battery to keep that overtake button on, lock that move in, and that was just a masterclass of strategy. Just waiting, biding their time to the perfect moment. That was a Ferrari drive done right. And as you see him coming onto the podium now, it's a well-earned one.
It absolutely is a well-earned win for our championship leader. And as you say, yeah, it was looking pretty likely given the way that race was going for Drake Dempsey. It could have been defended, perhaps, by Valentin Tayvard. He might have had just enough to come back towards the line in a bit of a drag race with the DRS, perhaps, but we don't get to see that. A mistake from the Haas driver, dropping him off the podium in the final grasps of this one. But Drake Dempsey does take the win then, as confirmed there. Jeffrey Ritchie finishing P2 after that spin as well. Daniel coming home with the podium. A good race for him in the Williams as well, just ahead of Joseph Loke in the Alpine, and Xander van Dijken, whose race just started to come undone a little bit towards the end, as we said. Valentin Tayvard, another one whose race came undone towards the end. Started P1, finishes P6 thanks to that spin. Zoltan Boda just behind him in P7. Milan Meyer finishes P8 ahead of Mert Comet in P9, and Simon Lekomsky does come home for a point after a very eventful race indeed for the AlphaTauri, rounding out the top 10 Jan Halliday tried to get the alternate strategy to work, finishes just outside the points in P11 ahead of Jake Finch, who ghosted out of the race from a disconnection earlier on. Modesto Mena tried the ultra alternate strategy with a 29-lap stint on the hards, which didn't really pay off, which is P13. And then the DNFs for the race. Yanni Topkov technically classified, but didn't quite finish. And those, of course, we saw retiring earlier on. But what a race we have seen this evening around Interlagos. Then I apologise for the green screen. The time of day is not my friend when it comes to this green screen, even with the key light on. But nevertheless, what a race we've seen this evening around Brazil. A track that never disappoints at Brazil. And of course, let's take one last look at the standings that we saw going into this. Drake Dempsey extending that championship lead with a third podium in 3 races for the Ferrari driver, third win of the season, as well. A strong performance to retain that lead and extend. Daniel's podium does mean the damage isn't quite as large as it perhaps could have been, and Jeffrey Ritchie staying in the fight as well with another podium on top of that. Zoltan Boda, that early season performance we saw from Zoltan Boda really starting to peel away a little bit. Luck not really on the Alfa Romeo driver's side tonight, of course, losing positions during that safety car earlier on with the double stack behind Jeffrey Ritchie. And then Xander Van Dyken and Valentin Tijvaard losing out a little bit towards the end of that one as well through mistakes and some slight empty battery problems. But let's head over to the interview screen and see if we've got any drivers available. Yeah, I forgot Drake Dempsey. Let's bring him straight in and have a chat with our race winner and championship leader then. Good evening, Drake. Another fantastic performance by you to take your 3rd win of the season, 4th podium overall. And I'm guessing that was the plan all along. Just bide your time and then strike towards the end of the race.
Yeah, 100%. It was very concerning because he seemed to have some straight line speed on that pass, but I managed to just pull it out.
Yeah, it worked brilliantly for you, and as I say, taking another win this season, strengthening your championship position. But did the safety car this evening sort of throw any doubts into your mind? Maybe cast aspersions at the way the race may have gone, or were you always thinking, no, I'm going to get him with the ERS later on?
I wanted that first place, so I wasn't 100%, of course, but I was very optimistic about getting it because when he was burning, when you're behind the car and they have clean air in front, it's harder for them to gain compared to you. So I had about from my engineer, I heard like 25% more than him near the end. So it was very crucial. But the safety car is actually more of a help, to be honest, because it threw away any risks of an undercut.
Yeah, which played beautifully into your hands towards the end. And were you worried about him maybe drag racing you to the line with the help of the DRS before the spin, of course, that you had on the final lap, or were you certain that was the move done at that point?
No, I was certain it was done at that point because he seemed to fall back a good bit, and I had a lot more ERS than him since he was blinking when I had like 30%.
A great calculation and thinking about far more things than even I could while talking about it. Just shows why you're leading the championship at the moment. Ben, any questions from you?
I just wanted to say, double in on that strategy. Say, is that a typical strategy that you tend to pull? Say that conservation, as it were, and then firing it all on the final lap. You said you had about 30% on Valentin Tijvaard, and that was pretty much on the money. And to say you executed it to perfection on that final lap, locking it in by sector 2 pretty much, and of course the spin from Tijvaard locking in that win. But is that usually a strategy that you lean on, or was that more of an experimental approach this time round?
It's one I've used many times in the past, and many people use it, of course, because it just seems to be good on the game to just gain in the slipstream or the dirty air behind, likewise. But yeah, I mean, it's just reliable, and if I can keep with, then it works. But if they have a straight line speed advantage that you saw last week at Imola, then it's not really going to work out, unfortunately. But I mean, it seemed that I was able to gain just enough to pass him, so very proud of that.
Yeah, and one final question for you as we close out round 8, of course, with 3 rounds to go after this one of the season. Your championship lead looking ever stronger for each race we go to, and Are you thinking now you've got one hand on that championship? You're thinking about closing it out now? Of course, everybody's still fairly close behind you, but the run of form you've been on of late is definitely very strong.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Daniel is only 20 points behind, so anything can happen in Jeddah in 2 weeks. So I'm not gonna say anything right now because that wouldn't be very. I don't want to jinx anything. Let's just say that. But I'd say that I'm pretty confident in my ability to do good as I can in Jeddah and maybe wrap it up at home if I have the advantage.
Absolutely. Eyes set on the prize, but not thinking too far ahead about it. I like that. But thank you for joining us for the interviews tonight, Drake, and congratulations on another win in PSGL F3, executed to perfection once again with the strategy at the end of that race, taking the win in Brazil.
Yep, cheers.
And I don't see anybody else waiting for any interviews for the time being. So this would be a perfect time to remind you all that if we remove the standings so you can see me and whatever's going on in the second thing over there for the moment, that if you fancy yourself as a bit of a driver in PSGL, you can now try out. Mid-season sign-ups are open on a Discord. All the instructions are in there, and yeah, maybe we'll be talking about your racing very, very soon as well. But as we close out this evening's racing then, and prepare ourselves for a bit of a break week, we'll take a look at the calendar, because of course, as Drake mentioned just a moment ago, is in fact a break week next week, and in 2 weeks' time, that's not the calendar, that's the calendar. In 2 weeks' time, we'll be heading to Saudi Arabia, which I know some people look at Saudi Arabia, Ben, and go, it's not a great track from real-life Formula 1, but from experience, league races around Saudi Arabia do not disappoint.
100% say the real-life counterpart may be a little bit different. Few other factors at play, but certainly on the league standpoint, drivers are certainly getting plenty of action around the Jeddah Corniche circuit. As one to watch, it's one to definitely be that for. Of course, to say you'll have the drivers who are coming off a little bit rusty potentially, so we could see some big wild cards as well heading into round 9. You don't want to be missing it.
Absolutely not. And yeah, a tremendous race here in round 8 in Brazil, and you mentioned at the top of the broadcast a somewhat poignant broadcast, well, and a bit more solemn than usual, but thank you for joining us nonetheless. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time for PSGL F3 as we take round 9 to Saudi Arabia. The Jeddah Corniche circuit awaits us in a couple of weeks. We'll see you there. Bye.
Take care.